Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the wandering black hole. If you keep up with space news, you'll know that lately, and rightfully so, it's been flooded with news of the James Webb Telescope as it unfurls and reaches its destination at L2, but while this is exciting and very promising, we have to take some time to remember our roots. The James Webb was preceded by the infamous Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble walked so James Webb could run. Since its launch into low Earth orbit in the 1990s, this space telescope has been delivering us amazing space discoveries, and this one is a bit of a frightening one. Back in 2017, the Hubble located a black hole, which is already frightening, but this one was peculiar. That is because they found that this one was basically being pulled or manipulated by gravitational waves. Basically what this means is that at some point this black hole is going to escape its own galaxy and begin roaming into the universe. Black holes are bad enough, I don't want them to start wandering around. The good news, however, is that despite this black hole weighing approximately the same as 1 billion suns, as it flies through space at 5 million miles per hour, it's estimated to be about 8 billion light years away from Earth, so we're pretty safe at this point.
Number 9. Kepler 1649c. Yeah, it's not all about James Webb today, okay? NASA's Kepler Space Telescope also discovered this one a while back, but while NASA was revisiting old observations in 2018 before, retiring said telescope, they noticed previous computer algorithms misidentified it, and upon second glance, it's indeed an exoplanet. Yep, 300 light years away from Earth, it's a tad larger than our planet, and it receives a good amount of starlight. It receives about 75% of what our own sun gives off. Thing is, Kepler 1649c orbits a red dwarf, meaning solar flare-ups could prevent further life from evolving, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, I don't know. No aliens, please, thanks. Number 8. Ross 128b. I love the names for all these exoplanets. It's just like Jake 21a. You're like, okay. Potentially habitable. So much monster energy. Back in 2017, this exoplanet was discovered by Xavier Bonfils at the Institute of Planetology and Astrophysics of Grenoble. Now this one is 11 light years away from us, it's pretty close, and it only takes 10 days to complete a trip around its M-type star. The star is redder, cooler, and dimmer, so perhaps this planet could one day host life. Or maybe it one day already did. Who's to say? Either way. Don't want it. Don't want any part of these aliens. Number 7. Ice Moon. We're looking billions of years into the past, we're searching cosmic clouds light years away, but what about our own galaxy? What about our own solar system? What about our own moon? Could there one day be life on our moon? Back in 2018, NASA confirmed that there is surface ice on the moon's north and south pole. This was huge. NASA mineralogy mapper instruments picked up ice traces near the darkest and coldest craters of the rock. There are 3 specific signatures that prove that there is 100% water ice on the surface of moon. Yeah, and we're talking about aliens whipping out of our oceans. Like, what's going on here? Something's afoot. Number 6. LEVELLAND Flaming Thing. Nice, that's a good title. Imagine opening the newspaper back in 1957 and on the front cover you read, "LEVELLAND Flaming Thing brings world knocking at city's door." That's alarming, that's a pretty crazy one. What does that even mean, right? Back in 1957 in Levelland, Texas, multiple eyewitness reports began to flood in about an egg-shaped object or this circular flash of light, something egg-like, jetting across Levelland skies. I just like saying Levelland, if I'm being honest. I'm trying to say it as many times as I can. I'm probably saying it wrong, it's probably like Leveland, but I'm gonna keep going with Levelland. One witness recalls the object making a loud humming noise as it flew by, which is different than other accounts that we've heard so far for, UFOs. The egg shape keeps coming back in history, right? We've seen this in multiple accounts, but this is an encounter where it's been reported as loud, with a great rush of wind. And on top of that claim, the witness's car radio began to go haywire. It was like, it was like, in case you missed it the first time. The radio thing isn't too crazy. I mean, growing up, my computer speakers would always tell me if a phone call was about to come in. Felt like I was from the future. That was always odd. The Air Force also commented on it, saying that this was just a phenomenon caused by electrical storms. It was a ball of lightning, they say. A ball of lightning back in 1957. Crazy, haven't seen many of those since. Number 5, 2017 UFO. I remember this one because I was really scared, not sure what was happening with the universe. Back in 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was then released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. A UFO. Or a UAP, sorry, we don't say UFOs anymore, now it's a UAP. There weren't a ton of details released about what exactly happened during this encounter because there weren't any details to provide, but the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward Locking Infrared, or ATFLR if you're out of breath like me, they were able to capture an extremely fast moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking a UFO at the altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean. And then they were shocked because the craft rotated on its side and then just flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and no one can figure it out yet. If you have any ideas, sound off below. All these mystery eggs floating in and out of our towns. Number 4, Europa life. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge around it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes may be responsible for said red tinge. The surface of its moon is mostly icy, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make this data make any sense. You know what I mean? There's some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions, some fish that have never seen light ever and they're glowy somehow. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they're all located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they then flash frozen in place. What a horrible way to go. Number 3, Venus cloud. Back in September 2020, astrobiologists everywhere were excited but also skeptical at some new potential evidence that had been found in the upper clouds of Venus. You probably heard about this, right? Firstly, can we just take a second to really think about how cool of a job it is to be an astrobiologist? To just be like, yep, aliens, let's do it. And then they plan a mission and then take off. Anyways, phosphine is very rare, and usually it's poisonous gas here on Earth that is basically always met with the presence of living organisms, right? So we find this gas, it's bad, but always connects with life. Venus hasn't really been at the top of the list for choices for finding potential life due to its surface temperature, of course, and pressure to the, sulfuric acids in the clouds, and it's horrible and you can never live there ever. But this new evidence could prove to say something otherwise. 2 separate telescopes were able to pick up the signatures of phosphine in a cloud that had a similar temperature and pressure to Earth, and while this isn't concrete evidence of, space beings or bugs or anything like that, it'll at least be a reminder that we should be continuing to look for life or clues around life, you know what I mean? Even in the most unlikely places, like Venus clouds. Maybe it's space bugs also, who knows? That'd be gross. Space moths that live in clouds of phosphine. That would suck. Number 2. Astronaut sightings. We could sit on Earth all day and talk about the potential for said alien life, but who would know more than the people who have actually been to space, right? I mean, who am I? I'm just the guy who makes YouTube videos. Ask the people who have been out there, which are of course astronauts. Ask Astronauts. That'd be a cool website. Ask Astronauts. It probably is a website, actually. Definitely on the list of the coolest and scariest jobs in the entire world. There haven't been a ton of people who have had the, privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that could potentially prove alien existence. People who have claimed these sorts of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they will also include some sort of government cover-up as well with their claim. So it's always pretty juicy. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, but at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket. But then Mission Control confirmed that that rocket was actually 6,000 miles away from them at the time, so there was no answers on what said flying object could have been. But they noticed it, as would you in a spaceship looking out of a window. And finally, number 1, moon life. Titan is one of Saturn's many moons. Saturn has 82 moons, so if there's any aliens hiding near Saturn, we're never gonna find them. They have many places to hide. A lot of nooks and crannies to hide behind. A lot of moons to hide behind. That's a lot of moons, and around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water under its massive shell of ice, which is really exciting. Again, like I said with our own moon, even traces of water is amazing, let alone this much. To quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it is abundant. NASA has also detected low frequency radio waves on the icy moon, and it sounds pretty eerie. So we have radio waves and we have water. Sounds like aliens to me, my friends. As far as space mysteries go, anywhere that has water or signs of water, fish. Some sort of alien fish is hiding in there. Look at our own planet. Look at an octopus. An octopus changes colors while it dreams. Alien. Kicking off the list at number 10, Gliese 581G. Kicking this list off with an exoplanet hiding in the constellation Libra. Yeah, to all my fellow Libras out there, this one's for you. Happy early birthday. It was discovered back in 2010, but Gliese 581G, still to this day, its confirmation is hard to pinpoint. Yeah, the thing with exoplanets is that they're a little far away. They're a little hard to see out there. But somehow the fine minds over at the University of Puerto Rico at Arecibo calls Gliese 581 the top candidate for alien life. You heard it here, folks. There we go. It's only sitting 20 light years away from our very own sun, and Gliese 581G is 3 times as large as Earth. So to all my Libras, bring a friend or two. Let's party it up. We got room. If you're a fan of New Year's parties, again, this is the planet for you. Every 30 days, we're counting down to a new year. So we don't have to wait too long to party. Off to a good start.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the TREMENTINA base. This is a location that was, of course, discovered using satellite imaging, and you might be wondering what this base holds that makes it so unsettling. Well, that is because this is the location that belongs to the Scientology-affiliated Church of Spiritual Technology. If you are unfamiliar, Scientology is a set of beliefs and practices that were invented by L. Ron Hubbard, and it has been variously defined as a cult. The core belief of this group is that humans are immortal and that our bodies are essentially just a shell to house us. There's also some alien stuff in there I'm not quite so sure about. This group is quite controversial, not only for the beliefs of the group, but because of their illegal activities that also occur, like fraud or spying on the government. There have been numerous Superior Court judgments which have not only called this group a dangerous cult, but also a manipulative, profit-making business as well. So this base is said to belong to the Church of Spiritual Technology, and they are said to be an entity that was formed to manage the copyright affairs of the Church of Scientology. This base is supposed to provide storage space for an archiving project, which is meant to preserve founder L. Ron Hubbard's writings, films, and recordings for future generations, which is definitely a terrifying thought. It is said that these texts have been engraved on stainless steel tablets that are encased in titanium capsules and held underground. Maybe a little overzealous if you ask me. In our number 8 spot today, we have Stereo A. The Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory, or STEREO for short, is a solar observation mission that was first launched in 2006. The mission saw the launch of 2 spacecrafts, Stereo A and B, and they were sent into orbit around the sun. This has caused the spacecraft to pull ahead of and fall behind the Earth, which has given them the opportunity to use their stereoscopic capabilities to get imaging of the sun, as well as phenomena such as coronal mass ejection, which is exactly what we are here to talk about today. In July of 2012, there was a CME, often referred to as a sort of solar superstorm, that tore through Earth's orbit, but luckily Earth wasn't there. The same couldn't be said, however, for the Stereo A spacecraft, as this storm and the craft collided. If this event had occurred just 1 week prior to when it did, Earth would have been right in the midst of it, however, so we were pretty narrowly missed. The Stereo A spacecraft has been able to remain operational despite this hot encounter. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Lost City. In 2011, archaeologist Sarah Parcak used high-resolution and NASA satellites in order to look for subtle differences on the surface of the Earth, and she used this in order to pinpoint the locations of buried ancient pyramids, towns, and ancient tombs in Egypt. This would allow her and her team to find these spots from thousands of miles away so that they could then go and excavate them. While this method led to many amazing discoveries, perhaps the most notable of all is the discovery of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian city. She and her team had found the lost ancient city of Tanis, which lies about 2 hours northeast of Cairo. Through this satellite imaging, she was able to find networks of streets and such that are completely invisible from the ground. The imaging also shows that the city is filled with underground tombs as well. Sarah explains why she enjoys what she does so much, saying, quote, "What's incredible about archaeology is literally every day archaeologists are making headlines by making the most incredible discoveries." Well, Sarah, this is certainly one of them. In our number 6 spot today, we have whales. There are quite a few satellites that orbit our Earth, and there has been for years, but as time goes on, we find new ways to use the information that they give us. According to an article written on January 20th of this year, there is a new study that is showing how, as satellite imagery improves, it is being used to accurately identify whales that have been stranded on beaches. The article goes on to explain why this is important, saying, quote, "For as long as humans have been monitoring the ocean, the only way we've known about stranded whales was to stumble upon them ourselves. But knowing about stranded whales, including where and when they strand and how many are ashore, is vitally important. Largely due to human causes such as ship strikes, pollution, and entanglement in fishing gear, whale strandings are on the rise. Their occurrence can often signal that something is amiss and hint at a larger ecosystem problem, such as a harmful algal bloom, yet the ground-based networks used to monitor stranded whales are biased towards wealthy, highly populated regions. It is very true that despite their enormous size, many of these creatures that wash up on remote coastlines or in resource-limited nations or in countries experiencing conflict end up going completely unnoticed." In our number 5 spot today, we have the SS Yasim wreck. The SS Yasim was a Bolivian cargo ship that sank on the evening of December 1st, 2003. For a while, no one was quite sure as to why it sank, as well as the fact that no one could find the wreck. This is exactly why it was so surprising when, a few years ago, the Google Maps team located the sunken vessel based on their satellite imaging. The ship was found on its side, perhaps in the same location it initially sank, in Wingate Reef, just off of the coast of Sudan. This wreck then became one of the largest visible on Google Earth until quite recently. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Lake of Blood. This is another find that came as someone was scrolling along and looking at all there is to see on Google Maps all the way back in 2007. This is when they noticed a blood-red lake that sat just outside of Sadr City in Iraq. Many people began to speculate what this could be about, including a ton of macabre ideas. There was even a rumor going around that said a local slaughterhouse in the area would sometimes dump their blood into canals, but this seems a little unnecessary and very unlikely. There hasn't yet been an official explanation for what exactly made the water so red, but it's most likely that the red color is due to sewage, pollution, or possibly some sort of water treatment process. I can understand why the startling image would get people's imaginations going, but it is likely a pretty reasonable explanation. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is located in China. The structures are reminiscent of geoglyphs, but are seemingly much more modern and newly created. The speculations of what this structure could be or why it was created went wild, with people saying that they were street maps of American cities or messages either to or from some sort of extraterrestrials. The list of bizarre theories just goes on. While this is still sort of conspiracy sounding, this is likely the most reasonable explanation for what these structures are, and that is that these structures are used to help calibrate China's spy and radar satellites. To be fair, this does make a lot of sense, and I don't have any other ideas for what it could possibly be. In our number 2 spot today, we have Leo 1. So, we live on Earth, which is one of the planets in our solar system, and our solar system sits in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way. There are other galaxies out there that are potentially similar to ours, but there are also things called satellite galaxies. So you know how our solar system is a solar system because we are bound to and orbiting around our sun? Well, basically these satellite galaxies are like that, but with bigger galaxies. Like, they orbit around our galaxy. It's a whole thing about gravity and all of that science-y stuff, but in the end, here in the Milky Way, we have about 50 satellite galaxies that orbit us, and the particular one I want to talk about right now is called Leo 1. We started investigating this specific one because of the fact that researchers realized that it doesn't contain a lot of dark matter. While studying this galaxy, it was found that although it is small, it has a massive black hole at the center of it. Like, it's so big in comparison to the galaxy itself that this black hole is almost as big as the one we have here in the Milky Way, which is unprecedented data. This discovery could lead scientists to redefining what their understanding is of how all galaxies formed. The galaxies are the building blocks of the universe, so this would be immensely interesting and important information, and it could change a lot of what we once believed. In our number 1 spot today, we have the missing hiker. This one is a little different from the others on today's list, but but it's a super interesting story that involves using satellites, and I had to share it with you. A man by the name of Ben Kuo has a hobby where he enjoys looking at different satellite imagery in order to look at all places all over the world. He has said, quote, "You can look and see what's going on in the world no matter where it is. It's kind of fascinating what you can see." He then went on to describe how it's kind of trivial, but he loves it, and in this case it was more useful than trivial. The case he is referring to took place in April of 2021 when a hiker named Rene Campion got lost in the Angeles National Forest. While lost with little reception and low battery on his phone, Rene was able to send one photo to his roommate, which he sent in hopes to give a clue about his location. The photo showed his legs with a sort of canyon below, and while I look at the photo and go, okay, he's somewhere that has rocks, I guess, people like Ben see this as a stellar clue. Ben said, quote, "Actually, I looked at the picture and I said, I bet I can find where this guy is." Ben used his own knowledge of hiking trails in the area as well as sites like Google Earth and EO Browser in order to zero in on where the missing hiker could be. It took Ben about 20 to 30 minutes to find what he thought was the location of the missing person, and he passed along the info to the search and rescue team. In the end, when the sheriff's department went out to investigate, they found the missing man less than a mile from where Ben suggested he might be. Once found and informed of how they located him, Rene said, quote, "I was like, wow, I didn't realize somebody had a hobby doing stuff like that. I owe him my life and everybody else that was involved in helping."
Kicking off the list at number 10, WASP 96b. Okay, we have to talk about some James Webb goodness in this list, of course. NASA just released a handful of photos from its $10 billion project. This telescope launched last Christmas and the gifts have finally arrived. And I'm terrified. We are so small in the universe. What is going on? In the cluster of photos, we see a giant exoplanet called WASP 96. And no, it is not full of wasps. I mean, I hope not, who's to say? But it could hold secrets behind human existence. WASP 96 is a gas planet half the size of Jupiter, 1,150 years away from us. It orbits its star every 3 to 5 days, so I hope you love New Year's parties because you're gonna have a lot of them. Thanks to our boy James Webb up there in space, we can now see that there's lots of water surrounding this planet. Clouds and haze, says NASA. That's good. I'm excited for more water to be found in the universe, but I'm also nervous because, you know, more water means more fish and, you know, also up aliens. Number 9, HD 85512b. This next planet's in HD, Chris. There we go. Put on your 3D glasses. Announced in 2011 alongside 50 other planets. Okay. HD 85512b was discovered by the High Accuracy Radial Velocity Planet Searcher instrument, or to save you some breath, HARPS for short, over in Chile. Yeah, Chile's casually exploring 50 planets over in their weekend. Okay. It's wild how some of these discoveries happened so long ago, but we don't talk about them nearly enough. Again, same deal as the Gliese 581g, this planet too is 3 times the size of Earth. It's actually 3.5 times bigger. Yeah, as far as commutes go, it'll take some time to get there. Yeah, we're still working on that part. The HD planet hides around 35 light years away from us. This one you can find in the constellation Vela, aka the snail. Is it truly habitable? Is there water on this planet? Well, that's to be determined. Our boy James Webb's gonna take a peek real soon. Number 8, Gliese 581e. Wait a minute, how many Glises are there? Is a single Gliese a goose? What's going on here? In typical part 2 fashion, I had to include another Gliese. There's actually 4 of them in total. I'm not going to do all 4 though. For more than 4 years, the HARP spectrograph attached to the ESO telescope in Chile, they were finding groundbreaking discoveries for 4 years straight. Astronomers found the lightest exoplanet so far to this day. The lightest planet, that's crazy. This one is quite small compared to others on this list. Gliese 581e is only twice the mass of our Earth, whereas the planet furthest out, Gliese 581d, orbits its star every 67 days. While Gliese 581e completes its orbit every 3 days. You know what I mean? Yeah, having a birthday every 3 days? Oh, what a nightmare that would be. Never going to this planet. This one can stay off our radar. Little small Gliese, little Gliese. Number 7, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon Musk tweeting about going to Mars or whatever he's doing over there, buying Twitter, I guess. But when NASA talks about it, I get a weird feeling, you know? It's NASA, you know? They're old school. They're like, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. Yeah. That's just it. That's the tweet. In 2022, just back in January, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. This is huge. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting, but we would really need to get more evidence to say that we've identified life." End quote. Okay, so we're close. It sounds like we're a little close. I don't know. Side note, imagine going on a Willy Wonka trip to Mars with Elon. Do we want to go? Like, he's announcing all these trips to Mars. I don't want to do that. I can't even drive to Ottawa for 4 hours, let alone Mars for years. No way. I'm homesick already. Number 6, Ryan Graves' UFO sightings. I mentioned this a little bit back in part 1, but I of course have to add more. Back in 2017, a $22 million defense program was put in place. It was called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now its purpose was to study military encounters with UFOs. And at this point, Navy pilots were coming out with their own story. Their eyewitness account of seeing a UAP, or a UFO if you're old school. Eventually, come 2019, senators felt the need to be briefed on these sightings. It was that serious. After a vote by the Senate Intelligence Committee in June 2020, it was agreed that UAP reports were now to get added to the Intelligence Authorization Act for 2021 and going forward. That's crazy. That's why more and more footage is coming out now every other week, you know what I mean? These incidents were filmed ages ago, but only now are they being released. It's kind of cool. According to the Times, 120 incidents were studied during this case, and it turns out the US military is not responsible for any of the 120. If they happen to be advanced drones sent to spy on the military, it's kind of important to find out who sent them, know what I mean? And recently, a former Navy pilot, Ryan Graves, he spoke out to 60 Minutes, and he explained that these UAPs would pop up during training exercises every day for at least a couple of years. He says, and I quote, "If these were tactical jets from another country that were hanging out up there, it would be a massive issue. But because it looks slightly different, we're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're happy to just ignore the fact that these are out there watching us train every day." That's a quote from Ryan Graves, real pilot. And these are goosebumps from me. Awesome, I'm terrified. Are aliens real? What are we doing, man? Like, let's move on before I faint. My gosh. Number 5, Milky Way radio burst. On April 28th, 2020, 2 radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves, and they only lasted just a millisecond, but they left astronomers baffled. The reason for this is because this was the first time a fast radio burst had been detected this close to Earth. This signal was located only 30,000 light years from Earth, which places it in our Milky Way galaxy. That's pretty damn close. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or again, CHIME if you want to save breath, they explained that the signal was so easy to pick up that CHIME wasn't even looking its direction and it still noticed the signal. It was loud and clear right in their peripheral vision. And another telescope, STARE 2, also saw it clear as day. Well, it looks like whatever the cause for the signal, someone or something, we saw it. So now what? We found you. You can come out now. Number 4, the LORIMER burst. This is a fast radio burst that was detected long ago. This was back in 2007, and it was named, of course, after the person who spotted it, Duncan Lorimer. Well, actually, it was discovered when Duncan assigned his student, David Narkovec, to look through archival data taken in 2001 by the Parkes radio dish in Australia. That's when they noticed. After analyzing this data, it was found that there was a dispersed burst that occurred on July 24th, 2001. This burst was less than 5 milliseconds long, and it was located just 3 degrees from the small Magellanic Cloud. It still isn't quite clear what caused said signal, but it's thought that perhaps it may have been a singular event, such as a supernova, or an Avengers level threat. One of the two. Number 3, light shifts. Back in 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a star that was newly discovered. Yeah, shifts in light. What's that about? This star sits about 1,280 light years away from Earth, and these shifts were very similar, as if something was passing in front of our view of the star. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or meteors or anything like that, so in turn, Jason whipped up an interesting theory that's lived rent-free in my head ever since. He stated that it's possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a slow orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Or maybe it's an asteroid. One of the two. Either way, I'm scared. Again. Number 2, Mount Rainier. Not to be confused with Mount Chiliad, although there's definitely aliens there as well. Mount Rainier in Washington was bumping and buzzing back in 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold made the first modern report of a flying saucer, or a UAP. Apparently it was a flying egg, actually, that's what it looked like. Kenneth saw 9 circular-shaped objects flying in formation. The classic formation, and they were flying at twice the speed of sound. So the Idaho pilot told the Air Force, and they laughed it off. They didn't believe him at all. He took this claim to his grave. Kenneth stood by what he saw until his death later in 1984. He said that he saw UAPs. He reached out to the Seattle Times in 1977, long before the movie Signs was made, and he said, "I made my report because I thought it was my duty. It was the only proper and American thing to do. I saw what I saw." End quote. And also, end point. I'm, again, terrified. And finally, number 1. The lights. Okay, imagine you're driving home one night after a long shift at work. Maybe you worked late and it's midnight. You're driving and you see a V formation, the classic formation, in the sky made up of yellow and orange lights. Do you pull over? Do you assume you're just, beyond exhausted and maybe this is all in your head? Because that's what I would do. Back in 2001, on July 14th, drivers along the New Jersey Turnpike saw just that. It was a touch after midnight and cars legit pulled over and people got out to get a better look at what was in the sky. Everybody looked at this thing for around 15 minutes. It was just hovering over top of the Arthur Kill Waterway right between Staten Island and New Jersey. Just floating there, just doing alien stuff. One eyewitness, Joe Mavasio, recalls the sighting as one of the most amazing things he had ever seen. And then just like that, the lights vanished. They faded out one by one in typical alien fashion. Daniel Tarrant of the Carteret Police Department recalls seeing this with his own eyes as well. It was 16 golden covered lights in a V formation. Aliens are fun and all, but keep your eyes on the roads, my friends, I'm not looking at anything. Aliens or not, 10 and 2, we're getting home. That's it. Seatbelts, I'm checking those mirrors. No aliens back there, we're good.